Hi, and welcome to PHQ, Questions from the Personality Hacker Community. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And let's get right to our question this week.
Hi, my baby is 10 months old. I know it's super early, but when can I start picking out aspects of her personality that might indicate what her driver and co-pilot are? She really enjoys listening to sounds and hearing sounds repeated back to her in the outside world. Thanks.
Thanks, Shelley, for the question. Typing babies, basically, or little kids.
Yeah.
Is it possible? Can you determine your child's personality type at 10 months, 12 months, 2 years? When can you start to determine what personality type your child is showing up with?
Right. This is a tough one because I actually don't think that you can when they're babies.
It seems pretty early.
Yeah.
Well, I think Shelley knows that. I mean, I think she recognizes that's a pretty young age to type someone.
Yeah. I mean, she said it's a little early. 10 months is a little early. And I think we talked about this on a PHQ before in personality types and children, or at least I feel like we said this in previous podcasts. But I do think that it's relevant to recognize that the first thing that you're going to be able to determine about a kid is their dominant cognitive function or their driver process. And that's probably not going to be very clearly manifest until they're, I think around 4 or 5 is when you can really start observing it come out.
Yeah.
Maybe even a little bit older depending upon the kid and the function, because some functions are more difficult to observe than others. Some of the functions, I think about our daughter Piper. She's 4 now, and it seems like she's probably she's probably evidencing the process of extroverted intuition, or what we call exploration. Now, we're a bit biased here because both you and I are ENPs in the Myers-Briggs system. And so that means our dominant process is extroverted intuition. Some of the things that are manifesting in her that make it appear as if that's probably her dominant process are things like she doesn't have a lot of fear or safety triggers. She just wanders off. She has no problem leaving our side in order to go explore something new. There's not anything that tells her that she should be like maybe checking in or making sure that mom and dad are around. So that's what leads us to believe that. But it could be evidencing extroverted sensing behaviors as well. So it appears as if she's taking after mom and dad, but that could also be just our bias.
Yeah, I remember, and when she was really young, like under 2, a baby, 12 months, 14 months old, we could leave her for long periods of time to play. She didn't really emote very loudly. She could be quiet and by herself for a while. We were even thinking when she was a baby, maybe she's a little introvert. Like she doesn't need to be around, doesn't seem like she feeds off the energy of the room, of people. Maybe we have a little introvert on our hands. And one of our friends even observed that too and said that to us. And then at this point in her life, like she can't even be away from, like she loves people. She loves to be around people constantly. She loves to be around us constantly. We're actually having to retrain. Hey, Piper, you need to go spend some time by yourself now. This is your alone time. No, I want to be with mom or dad. No, I want to go do this activity. And it's actually reverse of what she was like when she was a little baby.
Yeah, no such luck of her being an introvert.
No.
She's loud, bombastic, incredibly high energy, and very engaged with everything in her environment.
It's almost like if you and I had a child together. Mix the two of us. That's what she came out like.
Yeah,
it's almost like that.
So, and then I think about your son Sawyer, who, when he was about 5 or 6, we thought he was an introvert. We were thinking maybe he was an ISJ. He had introverted sensing as dominant process. And again, no such luck. He's definitely an extrovert as well. And he's very clearly at this age, at 8 years old, he's very clearly using extroverted thinking. So it appears as if he might be an ESTJ. So for him, I mean, for Piper, who knows what age she'll start manifesting her dominant process in more clear ways. For Sawyer, we were also going down the wrong path of thinking he was an introvert, and he wasn't. He seems like he's very clearly leading with extroverted thinking. So I wouldn't really start truly trying to determine the dominant process of your child until anywhere between like 6 and 8. I said 4 or 5 earlier, but even then you can be thrown off. And the reason why is that they're such sponges, and there's so much of their behavior is just developmental levels of a child. It's really easy to try to fit a developmental level into, like a particular niche, but a lot of their behaviors are going to be mirroring behaviors. There's going to be a lot more tendency to be open to new things in some ways because they're little kids and they're trying to figure life out. And then, in other ways, they're going to be biologically wired to not be very exploratory. They're going to be like, I think about all of the kids that we have, your 2 boys and then Piper. They're not very exploratory when it comes to food, and they're biologically wired that way to like spit things out that taste a little bitter because, like a long time ago, if they put the wrong berry in their mouth, they would die. So they have like heightened taste buds. So it's hard to determine what is biological programming, what's simply, just basic child developmental programming versus evidence of a specific cognitive function.
Yeah, I mean, a little baby is going to exhibit sensory things. They're going to learn and touch and taste and hear and repeat sounds back and all these things. And, it'd be easy to say, well, that must be a sensor child. I mean, intuitives, though, also deal with sensation things. It's all part of growing up at a very young age. You have to go through all the processes of coming online in life as a human or as any creature that's alive and sentient. That's just part of growing up. So I agree with you, Antonia. I think that probably around I forget what we said in past episodes around the time, but I would feel comfortable a little earlier than 7 or 8. I think 4 or 5-ish. You could probably tell, depending on, you got to know what you're doing. You got to know what you're looking for. There's probably some indicators, but to be safe, especially you're having your child go take a test or sit down in like a profiling session with someone. I mean, you did this with one of our clients one time. He had you profile. How old was his son at the time?
I think he was about 8 or 9.
He was around 8 or 9. And then, 3 years later, I think you revisited it, and some of his aspects of the personality you'd identified at 8 or 9, by the time he was 11, had started to change for him.
Yeah.
There's so much that changes when we're little. I mean, there's just so much that we're coming online with. It's really difficult to determine this. But I would say that, keep an eye on it. Just see what happens with your child. But the biggest part is keep an open frame. Keep an open mind to, if you see indicators one way, it might change in 6 months or a year, and just be open to that. Understand you shouldn't lock or try to craft the entire life for your child around a type you think they are, and then here a year later it ends up being a different type, and now you've deprived them maybe of the things they did need. But just expose them to as much wide range of things as possible, and just kind of keep an eye and an ear out for it.
There are certain things, I think that maybe this might be where the dichotomies are a little more handy than the cognitive functions, because I think evidence of certain dichotomies will come up. I think like with all 3 of, our kids, they're all clear extroverts. And just knowing that is helpful.
Sawyer is not a people person, though.
No, he's not.
He doesn't really hang out with people. He doesn't engage with people very much, but he's clearly an extrovert.
Yes, exactly. He wants to be engaging with his environment, and he's very loud and bombastic, and he likes to perform, but he's definitely not a people person. And so recognizing that he's an extrovert that's not a people person is extremely helpful. And that helps narrow it down too. That's one of the reasons why we think extroverted thinking makes the most sense. And he has like these things that he needs to have organized. He has these things like he needs to have certain habits set up. When he knows he has a safe container, he's very strategic. When he knows he has a safe container, he relaxes. So there are certain things that do come up that are obvious. If it's not so much trying to type your kid as young as possible, it's more being sensitive to some of the behaviors that do surface and then trying to be responsive to those. I think it's pretty clear that Piper's probably a feeler. Now, she's only 4. Who knows what her actual personality type is? But it seems to me that she does a lot of just instinctive manipulation of emotions. She's trying on a lot of emotions for size. She tends to work in the realm of emotional manipulation, which of course is common to all children, but for her it seems a little bit more like she's doing a lot of test iterating there. She'll look in the mirror and just make faces at herself. And it's almost like she turns on a dime when it comes to emotions. This all seems to me to be evidence of introverted feeling, but I don't know this to be true. All right. So it just feels like that, but I don't know that to be true. But it does seem like she's probably a feeler. Lots of kids are going to feel like feelers, though, because you don't have a lot of emotional control as a child. That's one of the skills you're trying to develop. So a lot of kids are going to, appear that way. But I think for her, it's pretty clear that she is. Whereas your two sons, I think, are pretty clearly thinkers. So that just seems to be emerging over time. And we're trying to be responsive to that. We're not locking them into that. If it started to show up a different way, I think we'd be responsive to that as well. But what we do with your two boys is we try very hard to make sure that everything we say is good data, good information. It's very, clean information. One of the things I established with them when they were really little is I will never lie to you, ever. I won't bend the truth. I won't let you win, and I will never lie to you. And that was one of the things I did as a stepmom to try to get in their trust. And because they're both strong thinkers, like that was something that they rested into me. Whereas with Piper, it feels more like we need to be honoring her emotional experience. And so I think these certain things will show up over time. And if you're sensitive to them, you don't have to know their complete 4-letter code. You don't have to know what their dominant and auxiliary cognitive functions are quite yet. Just go for the low-hanging fruit. What is the most obvious thing, and can you be responsive to what's obviously starting to emerge? If they are obviously evidencing as an introvert, are you making sure that they're getting enough alone time? Now, everybody needs alone time. Extroverted kids will need that too. But an introvert will need it in more of a survival way. So are you making sure they're getting plenty of alone time? If they're extroverts and you happen to be an introvert, are you making sure they're getting plenty of socializing time? But maybe that's not the thing that's obvious. Maybe what's really obvious is that they're a judger or a perceiver. If they're a judger, are you making sure they have control over their domain? And if they're a perceiver, are you giving them plenty of time to be to improvise and to have those moments where they can just, go hog wild? So it's not even so much about, again, getting the specific type down as early as possible. It's just looking for the low-hanging fruit and being responsive. And then, like you mentioned, Joel, not locking them into that. If it changes in 6 months, then being responsive to the change and making sure they're getting those needs met at that moment.
Thanks, Shelley, for the question. If you have a question for us, head over to personalityhacker.com/questions. Our preference is you record your question. You can do that right on that page. Or you can also type a question and we can read it out loud on the air and answer it as well. But we'd love to hear from you. Any questions you have around typology, personal growth, models of human development, frameworks, these kind of questions we love to answer here on PHQ. You can also join our community of like minds. It's growing every day over at facebook.com/personalityhacker or twitter.com/personalityhack, HACK. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
And this has been PHQ, questions from the Personality Hacker community. We'll talk with you on the next episode.